Welcome to this current edition of Insights. A warm welcome to our followers, both those who have been following us from the very beginning, from the inception of this series of webinars, as well as the new followers who have just joined us now. Insights is a series of webinars for the benefit of those who are joining us for the first time, which I, Roberta Lepre from Weave Consulting, the CSR specialist, together with my colleague Nadia Patch, business strategist, have put together to bring to you key insights from leading entrepreneurs across the globe. And today, to share their knowledge and their expertise, we have two fantastic guests from Greece and Cyprus. We have with us George Sarris, as well as Ioannis Pantazopoulos. Welcome, a warm welcome to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So maybe George, I'll start with you. Perhaps you could introduce yourself and your company and a little bit about your background.
Yes. So I'm the managing director of Hosting B2B. Hosting B2B is an enterprise hosting provider. We provide server solutions for enterprise clients in Malta, Cyprus, and UK. We are focusing on high-end solutions for iGaming and betting companies. That's why our existence in Malta. And we have recently launched a blockchain solution, which we think that it would be the new era for the industry, both in the digital transformation of Malta and Cyprus as well as blockchain islands. So company's philosophy is to invest in people and to invest in technology as well. Every day there is a new startup going in, and technology vendors are launching new services every day. So we have many years of experience in enterprise networks, as I said. And
so you've just started the company, Yorgos, a few months ago, just before the pandemic started or during?
So we started the company, this new venture with a blockchain solution. But you know, company management is not something new for me. I've been in and out of managing a few brands throughout the years. And hopefully this will be I will not say the last, but it's my first sole project that I'm doing in this career path, let's say.
Excellent. Best of luck.
Innovation path.
Ioannis?
Kalimera from my side as well.
Kalimera.
Kalimera, Ioannis.
I am responsible for managing 3 countries for AirFrance and KLM as a group. Those are Greece, Turkey, and Cyprus. And by the brand, you understand that I work for the aviation industry, of course, the one that has been hit the most during all incidences and the pandemic as well, which I guess we will touch upon a bit later. I've been in the airline industry, wow, as much as I can remember myself, actually, to be honest. I am glad and I feel privileged that I always had an international career. So I had the privilege to work around in many countries, in and out Europe. So that gave me a lot of understanding of other cultures and other entrepreneurs and other industries as well. So this is where I am. And as I said, we are in the middle of the hurricane as an airline, and we are trying to figure out the way to get out of this. So this is where we are.
In terms of hurricane, Ioannis, perhaps you can elaborate further a little bit. What were the main impacts? Obviously, the aviation industry was one of the hardest hit. What would you say were and still are your main challenges?
To start with, I would love to give you two numbers. I will not make it so scientific, but I guess it will be two numbers that everybody can understand. I have a metric that has been done from IATA, and for those of you who don't know, IATA is the foundation of the Airline Association community. But just to go back to the number, I want to give this to you. The revenue, we call in our language the RPKs, the revenue per available kilometer. So the revenue, the money that we earn for every passenger that they fly from one point to another. In April 2020, and this is a year-over-year index, went down by 94%, 94%, whereby also the same period, the available seat kilometers, so the available capacity, the available flights, the available seats that were in the market globally went down by 87%.
Wow.
So these two numbers, we can call it hurricane.
Yeah, sure.
I think these are the two numbers that you can keep. I mean, this tells a story, whether we want to name it hurricane, whether we want to name it I don't know.
Unprecedented for
unprecedented
sure.
situation. We can tag it. So this is a situation. Most probably you have seen it yourselves. You don't see. Most probably, if you look outside your windows, most probably back in a couple of months ago, 3-4 months, you could see planes flying in or flying over your airspace. You don't see that very often now.
No.
And the biggest challenge for the aviation industry was unique. First of all, to see majority of the carriers not operating at all. It was a pause. So historically speaking, we've seen crises. Just to name some, we've seen 9/11, we've seen SARS. We can go a bit further if we want to Iraqi war and so on and so forth. But we never seen the airline industry pausing. So that is one of the things that this is first ever. And on average, during this period, the maximum capacity that we've seen worldwide, and as the numbers have described, is around 90% was grounded. So that's to me, even to think of, it's an unprecedented thing, as I said, and that was the biggest challenge. And so, as I said, that's the biggest.
Obviously, that number, Ioannis, permeates all the operation, obviously, not only from a commercial aspect, but also from an operational aspect, from strategic aspect, from a sustainability perspective as well. Because obviously, as we all know, the airline can pause for maybe a week, but for a month, or even running 2 months or 3 months, or even a little bit more, depending on the country and depending on the situation, that is obviously is going to hit the aviation industry at a much larger extent. In fact, we've already been witnessing massive redundancies across the globe in terms of the aviation industry because of the sustainability aspect. So today, Roberta, we have two different contexts completely. We have your coming from the IT industry, the IT background, hosting solutions, working remotely, supporting companies, where probably, obviously, Yorgos will be able to give us a completely different picture, because obviously the demand was on the high side, whereas Ioannis is definitely, his situation is completely different, because the situation within the aviation industry, as we said, is still going to go through a number of different changes. So,
and going back a little bit of a throwback, Nadia, to one of our earlier editions, where we're still bringing insights specifically from Malta. we also had a leading player in the aviation industry here who was going through a similar hurricane, to use Ioannis's phrase. So it seems like that industry specifically has been the hardest hit
because
all over the globe.
Indeed, it was hit from the very beginning, obviously, because once you close the airport and then you don't have a connection between countries, then obviously even the ground handling stuff and even the airport facilities, it's even the ancillary services surrounding the aviation industry, which is
just to add to what you're saying, Roberta and Nadia, and we also need to have in our mind the dependency that the industry aviation has when it comes to employment.
Of course.
So this is a great dependency. It's not only the aviation, because people might think, okay, it's an airline. What happened with an airline? It's not just the airline. The dependency goes, and it's far broader than we can think of. So this is just to have in our minds.
Of course. George, your experience.
Was it completely different, Yorgos? Was it a matter of having to deal with the additional demand, with the additional requests, or that your clients responded to the pandemic in terms of the services you provide?
So coming from an island myself, such as Malta, once you close the borders, I would fully agree, it's very difficult to generate any local business within the country. Adding that with the total lockdown, everyone staying home in an island, which there are not much things to do apart from the sea, if it's a nice weather and stuff. So I guess I know that from Ioannis that the aviation hit was 94% per mile and 87 per seat capacity. I am guessing the only valid business was the repatriation flights.
I suppose, and commercial flights, I presume, would have had to operate.
There was the main operation back then was repatriating to those that we could repatriate, and the authorities were enabling the airlines to fly in and out of these countries, and cargo operations.
Yes, so that's very important. From the technology perspective, we have seen business that were ready for this digital scalability, I would name it. And we have seen companies that they weren't ready, and they even managed with our consulting to scale up fast and pick up with the demand, not to stop their operations. And we see companies that, due to, just like Malta has a limitation with bandwidth in the remote locations, and local business internet is not sufficient to sustain any remote work. My example is that companies that had their servers in the office couldn't support traffic when their employees were working from home. So you have a very minimal internet bandwidth, which is not compliant to sustain more than X amount of people connecting remotely at the same time. So the need for a local data center in both Cyprus and Malta was very, very, very high. That's one thing. So people wanted to co-locate their equipment in our local data centers, which the bandwidth was high enough to sustain their whole business procedures. So thank God, once again, the technology sector and the IT sector was, it remained unhit through this pandemic, and not only unhit, if you allow me to say, but it flourished into another new perspective. We've seen services such as remote working solutions coming up now. We've seen cloud solutions.
Perhaps as well. Redundancy.
Sorry?
Even from a redundancy perspective,
I would come to that. That's a nice pass. We've seen solutions, remote working solutions. We've seen these cloud conspiracy theories coming up. But when you are a manager and you have to choose between shutting down your business or giving your data to the cloud and eventually trust that the tech giants will do their part in protecting your data and your end clients by end of the day. So I expect to see an increase in cloud technology throughout 2021, 2022, and
so there was a shift of mindset as well, Yorgos, for companies.
Yes, definitely.
Especially those companies that, like you mentioned, that didn't trust perhaps having the data on the cloud, whereas they had full control, or they felt that they had full control of the data internally, then they had to trust to outsource it for continuous sustainability, which is very interesting.
Not to trust only the cloud, but to trust also the security.
I think.
Yes, because when you see the server at your office or any technology, you suppose that this is secure because I have the key. I have the key to my office and nobody can touch the server while I have the key. But because of their inexperience, they don't know that actually hosting the server from your office it can cause multiple security issues, because in the cloud you have authentication login, you have two-factor authentication, you have adaptive artificial intelligence security solutions, you have these so many tools to protect your data.
To audit trails, yes, for sure. So probably, as you said, for some companies it was much easier than others, for sure, because some others were prepared. Some companies were prepared, like companies within the outsourcing industry, companies that have part of their provision based on IT solutions and ICT.
You see, the companies that was proactive was the companies that under somehow they have been regulated or certified. So ISO 27001 certification, ISO 9001, ISO 22304, which is the business continuity, and MGA licenses, MFSA licenses for Malta and from Cyprus Forex companies. Those were the guys that they were ready to do the transition, because they were forced to keep a disaster recovery site, business continuity plans, backup solutions, offsite backup as well.
There was a certain readiness, for sure, from their aspect, because those certifications are very thorough, and for sure they go through all the different procedures within the operation. So as we mentioned, Robert, again, for Yorgos, it was a completely different situation than Ioannis.
I find this interesting, Nadia, as well, the point that has been made about certification, because these are often considered to be cumbersome procedures, but this is a clear example of how the investment of time and energy into making sure that the business processes are well spelled out ultimately result in more resilience, more adaptability, more readiness, as you said. So
despite the bureaucracy and the administrative tasks which go with a certification process for most companies, definitely there's a clear advantage, especially when in times of need and change and resilience as well.
Yes.
In terms of, I'm interested to listen to Ioannis a little bit more in terms of challenges, perhaps, Ioannis, because from a practical, more practical aspect, so to speak, from the aviation industry, obviously in your case, if you can highlight the three main challenges that you faced. I know that you have a myriad of different aspects and different challenges that you've encountered, and the list is endless. I'm pretty sure about that. But three main challenges that were at the top of each and every agenda on a daily basis. What would you consider to be as soon as the pandemic hit, let's start, we're still discussing a little bit the pre-COVID.
If we're still in the pre-COVID, not that many things have changed though, especially for the airline industry. However, for an airline, the biggest challenge always really will remain, always, not to be able to operate, to fly. So we are talking about an industry that has been built upon carrying passengers from A to B. That's where they need to fly. So the pandemic, the biggest challenge for an airline during the pandemic, pre-COVID, even during COVID or post-COVID, that we will discuss eventually. But definitely the biggest and the greatest challenge for us was always not being able to operate. And just to clarify myself here, not to the extent that the airline didn't wish to operate, because by the way, AirFrance KLM group was one of the groups that never stopped operating all these months, never. But we were operating only, and that comes our second challenge, to those countries that they were giving us the hygiene protocols and the clearance in order to operate. To give you an example, today for marine and offshore, for instance, which Malta is also one of the countries that has a knowledge about merchant marine, a lot of Filipinos, they need to go back to their countries because they've been stranded. We've been locked down in our houses. There are people that they've been locked down in a vessel. And knowing that their time has come to an end, meaning that their duty time has come to an end, and all of a sudden they need to stay there more. So at this stage, we cannot even carry passengers from A to B, and I mentioned Filipinos because they are very linked, just because regularities from the countries does not allow yet European carriers to operate there. So not being able to operate with all, I think is the greatest challenge of all. And of course, there are a lot of things that can come as a result to that, which comes down to people not being able to work properly, people that need to work remotely. In some functions in our industry, people can work remotely, in others they cannot. So a lot of challenges have hit us, but they all started from the fact that an airline cannot fly. If you try to think about it, I mean, it's like you have a supermarket without having anything to sell in it. So I think that is the foundation of the challenges, and then all the challenges that come as a result of that exactly.
And in fact, looking a little bit forward, if I may, in the coming weeks and perhaps months, Ioannis, there is a little bit of a situation of perhaps 3 steps forward, another step backwards, because obviously we don't really know yet how it will pan out. We're saying post-COVID, but the terminology in itself isn't actually very precise or correct, because we're already seeing some countries that might be the numbers of COVID reported cases are increasing. They're retracting a little bit back. Israel had to close down and go back on lockdown. Other countries kind of following and going back to restrictive measures. So obviously, this is not over yet. This is a situation which we still have to go and transit and perhaps to learn and try and live with it. Because we are having now discussions even at an economic level and an economic perspective, whether we can afford and whether some countries can afford another lockdown or total lockdown. Because from a health perspective is one thing, but from an economic perspective is completely different. So we're definitely, we're not out of the woods yet. So for sure, this is going to be an extended challenge. And Q3, Q4, I believe, for most companies, especially the tourism, aviation, tourism, and the other related sectors, are going to really watch carefully, because that will determine how deep will be the dip for those particular segments. And so how do you consider this going forward, Ioannis? Do you think is it true that we're going to go back and forth? We have to analyze on a week by week basis, on a monthly basis, and assess the situation across countries, because you're also managing 3 different countries, Ioannis. So that's a challenge in itself.
Correct. 3 different countries with 3 different views and 3 different regulations when it goes down to pandemic. So one country is in European Union, one other country is outside European Union, and the third country is within European Union but outside Schengen. So we never thought that this will play a significant role 3 months down, before. Now we say no, that's plays hell a lot of difference, because Schengen does something different, EU does something different, and non-EU does something different, and that's of course making the situation more complex. The most important thing, and I will start with this, is one thing that we learned, first of all, is that we cannot plan ahead anymore. And the best example of that is any carrier, us included, we now only publish our network, what we call a skeleton network, to a maximum of 2 months ahead. 2 months ahead. That's a maximum.
Remarkable.
We only know, and we can vouch, and we can be sure about what will happen the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's a month. But in order to attract more business, we go to this extent. So that is one of the biggest, again, challenges, and not being so secure, not feeling so assertive that things will change. The first thing also that we need to accept is, us as human beings, we have changed our behavior. And I think it all starts with our behavior, because at the end of the day, we are all customers, okay? We are all entrepreneurs in some way, but we are all customers. So if our behavior have changed, everybody else's behavior have changed. To that perspective, we know that we need to reconsider the way we do our business. We have this meeting today via video. Back in the old days, we would love to meet each other, kiss each other, and then have an open panel and discuss. Now we see the convenience of it, but we also see the cost efficiencies of it. And we have to be very honest. So there are a lot of things to consider. Also, when it comes down to aviation specifically, it seems that we are going to need to open up our mind a bit. We are going to need to use seeing our stewardesses and our stewards wearing the mask, like being in a surgery room, and your fellow passenger like that. We need to get used on how important is social distancing. We need to also be a bit more responsible on washing our hands and doing things differently. A lot of things will change. Things are changing as we speak. I always go back to myself and see where I was 4 months down the road and where we are now. So my behavior, let me talk about myself, has changed. So I can now understand why my customers' behavior has changed and will change and we also need to be a bit pragmatic. Talking about numbers, what we expect about the cost scales and the efficiencies to change, this is the one thing. And in my industry, again, IATA is predicting that nothing will change and go back to a normal situation. Normal is 2019, before end of 2022, beginning of 2023, which we can only speculate, assume, and we need to define what is change. Sorry?
It's the same prediction actually that, or at least as a ballpark figure, for tourism in Malta as well. So the prediction is 2021, at best 2022 to reach 2019 numbers, all things being equal, and that has quite a heavy weight in itself as a remark. So
it is, and just to add into that, this is my remark, 2019, because we need to clarify that as well. Going back to 2019, we just compare to numbers, but we also need to think 2019 from the IATA perspective also, the increase of the capacity of the demand that was expecting, because it was a year with, with less recession. Europe and the world was in a better shape than 2018. We were expecting on average an 11% increase.
Oh, wow.
So when we're talking 2019, we're talking, this 11% will never come back anyway. So we're talking flat numbers here. But yes, nobody can actually tell us whether 2021, 2022, or 23, or whatever is the right number or the right time that everything will go back. What I can tell you from our perspective is that the airline industry, we are trying gradually, depending on how and when we are permitted to fly over, that to regain our capacity and our dynamic by end of year, and that is the end of 2020, and being able to recuperate at least 50% of our current operation. So that to give you a scale to understand where we stand at this stage and what our expectations. But as I said, we can only plan ahead at a very short time and very short notice. You all seen it and you understand what I'm saying.
Ioannis, I'd like to just latch on to something that you mentioned just a few minutes ago, which is really about the ability of a leader, of a manager, to accept and to actually embrace change. I think, again, this is one of the key insights that has been a recurring theme within the various episodes that we've had. However, we're seeing as well, in practical terms, working on the ground, that it seems that there are two kinds of leaders. So the ones who are waiting and hoping that everything will go back to what they or we considered as normal, and the ones who are actually accepting that things will not be the same and that they are ready and willing to accept change. What do you think are the qualities which distinguish between these two types?
To me, the most important thing is at all stages, you need to demonstrate responsibility. This is the most important thing for me. You need to, in order to demonstrate, first of all, responsibility, you need to understand where you are, what is the situation. So based on this, analyzing and understanding the situation, then to me, the most and the utmost important is responsibility. You need to proceed and approach this kind of things with responsibility, because we need to mind that for a leader, just because other people are seeing you, not only what you're saying, they see your body language, they see your face on a daily basis, they see whether you're smiling, whether you are not smiling, whether you're sad. So that might tell us a story. So to me, responsibility is very important. Also, being interactive with the peers and the team is also very important. And the utmost important, and this is what we are doing today, and we are exercising, keeping the communication flow. It is very important during the crisis to communicate constantly with your peers, with your teams. It's like a situation whereby when you fly on board and you feel that the plane is a bit shaky, you only feel good when you hear the captain say, ladies and gentlemen, nothing to worry about, it's just a bumpy
That's true.
plane. So this is to me a proof of a leader that you are on top of the situation, you are controlling the situation. Thus, I wanted to sum it up in the word called responsibility. You can only deal with situations like that, being responsible, and of course, you need more skills than that. You need to know how to plan, especially when you deal with different people, different cultures. You need to respect many things. You need to understand practices, challenges, and of course, the thing that a leader should do for himself is to need to control stress situations, because we are only humans, each and every one of us. And at the end of the day, you need to start with yourself in order to be ready to present yourself to greater audiences. So that's, if I want to sum it up in few words.
Excellent.
Excellent summary, Ioannis. Yorgos, what do you think? How leaders' behavior, how did the behavior of leaders change? Or is it changing?
Just to Ioannis mentioned some very interesting things today. I'm not an aviation expert, but I was a good aviation client. I used to travel at least once a month, sometimes 2 or 3 times, and depending on expos and exhibitions, and the business, I mean, in a global scale, I think will be okay. It took the first hit about a month or two, but I see that the business is coming back to normal now. Innovation is the mindset that covers most businesses nowadays. And I think as a global perspective, I will be optimistic and see that the global economy, okay, it will take a hit, but it will not take a hit as the global economic crisis of 2012. I would say now that you cannot travel, the cost of acquiring a client will be very minimal, because you will do the Zoom meeting and your services and your products are there. So onboarding a client or a lead or marketing your product can be very less cost, I would say. So you can put an ad into Facebook, into social media, and acquire. You don't have to go. You don't have to pay yourself an exhibition stand.
True. From that aspect, I can see your point, Yorgos. I beg to differ on many fronts, because I still believe that nothing beats the one-on-one, especially when you're closing a deal.
Yes,
I
definitely.
mean, moment as well, social media is overly cluttered with many messages, businesses. So obviously there are different schools of thought, and one would have to see where they can fit, how innovative they can be, how can they reach the client, and more importantly, to touch upon something that Ioannis mentioned as well, is the changes in the consumer behavior, because obviously this will definitely have an impact of how we are going to reach our customers or newly acquired customers with their new behavior. So obviously, I also agree with Ioannis that even my behavior as a consumer changed completely, almost drastically over the period of 3 months in many aspects. So let alone if you take that to a global perspective and to a global scale, I think. But definitely, Yorgos, let's stay positive and optimistic, because definitely from every crisis, we've all read about companies that were successful and were set up during crisis. So there will be opportunities for sure.
Yes.
For those who think out of the box, who are innovative, who collaborate with the right people, and find the right way to launch into the market. Interesting discussion, Roberta, today. Two different
Just to
Very
add
much.
one thing,
Yes,
just
of
to add
course.
another one thing, I think people will not go on holidays today, this year. That's for sure. So that's why I expect they will do much work during summertime. And in my country, and Malta as well, August was a whole holiday month. Everyone was closed, the factories was closed, and everything was, it was like a dead month. So now with 3 months in lockdown, I see a lot of...
We had our shutdown already.
Yes, yes. And you know, in Cyprus, because we still have the recovery from the other economic crisis that hit us before this year, and we see the housing industry taking a rapid expansion in Cyprus. So the building industry, the manufacturing industry, which it was total lockdown during August time periodically in Cyprus, I would say, it's managing to keep up with the demand, to finish government buildings, investments from foreign capitals. So they will definitely have to work during August time and in September. That's why I'm being optimistic.
Well done. Yes, Yorgos.
Can I just add the comment on George's? Sorry to
Yes.
what he just mentioned. Sorry, George, but I have a different view when it comes to tourism. You just proof of changing the behavior. Sorry to say that. You come and we come from countries that we are heavily dependent on tourists and services, and I'm in a position to know that tourists, both in both cases, Cyprus and Greece, will come based on the laws that we see. And to my perspective, this is very promising, and I'm really happy to see going back to the behavior. The more we change the behavior, the more we can go back to whatever we call normal. And allow me just to say, especially for the aviation, especially the airlines, they have invested a lot in order to make sure that people will be on board as safe as possible. So this I wish to mention, unlike most probably other means of transportation, which I do not know what are the developments there, but at least for airlines and airports, I can say that they have invested, even though the costs and the revenues were struggling, to say the least. They have invested a lot to make sure that customers can be on board, safe and healthy. They have changed filters. We have done so many things that I know it's not the time to mention, but please, the only way for us to change the behavior of others is to change our behavior. That's the utmost important, and also to stress the things that are happening in order to have people quickly back on board and quickly back in our countries in order to enjoy the services that we can provide. Sorry for that, George.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward.
I love traveling, so don't worry. I will not change my consumer behavior. At least after the vaccine, which recent publications are mentioning that it will be ready within the proposed time frame of early next year. So I'm just being optimistic.
Of course, we have to be realistic and optimistic as much as possible, I believe.
And maybe on this optimistic note as well, I don't know if you share this view, but I've heard it being said that COVID, to a certain extent, gave us the opportunity to pause and to actually reassess what we are doing and how we are doing it. Because perhaps before the pandemic hit us, we were so much pursuing our day-to-day objectives and really chasing growth that we didn't really have time to reflect. So this was also an opportunity perhaps for some to reset their business model and their business processes. Would you share this view?
Can I?
Of course, whoever would like to start first.
Yes, definitely. Anything that gives you the time to pause for many things, that also gives you the time for reconsideration. First of all, to go through yourself, to go through others, to go through things that you haven't done, through things that you need to do. You need to assess things, you need to review things, you need to reconsider things. So yes, that's for sure. And if we want to have a conclusion for that, allow me to say that from many crises, the biggest gain is that we need to learn. Today, from this crisis, we need to learn. If we just consider that this was just another crisis, so we managed to overcome with whatever way, and then we move on with our lives, then most probably we have done completely wrong. To me, this is the learning curve. Okay, it's tough. We are all into that. It's absolutely tough, but there is a learning curve. So we need to learn from the crisis. That will make us more intelligent next time there is something else going on, which we couldn't know. But at least that's my understanding. I want to learn more. I want to understand. I want to adapt into the new situation. I want to adapt my behavior, because if I don't do that, then I'm just all alone in this planet, just crying out for whatever happened till today. So this, to me, is the utmost important.
Interesting remark.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So, any other comments? If not, we would like to thank you both for being with us today. Yorgos, you wanted to say something before we close off?
Yes, I want to mention that each pause, I would name it pause, is a very good chance to keep up with yourself. Not as a businessman, but as a human being. What you are doing, are you happy with what you are doing? I mean, you have to love what you do in order to be successful. That's my main recipe for success in everything. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are not happy, such pause breaks give you the possibility to reinvent yourself. So
make the necessary changes, perhaps.
Yes, you have to make the necessary changes in order to be happy. Life is short, but if you do it good enough, short is enough. That's what they say, right?
And for sure, the Greek and the Cypriot way is a nice way of living life. For sure.
Yes, I had my holidays for this year was a sailing yacht from Volos to Skiathos.
Wow.
From Skiathos to Alonissos, Skopelos. I'm a holder of a sailing yacht, a license. So for me, I missed that, and but
enjoy.
I'm still optimistic, and
there is no need to miss it, George. Greece is open up, as you may aware of, for the tourists, and officially it's opening up its doors on July the 1st. So stick on your plan. As long as your behavior is positive, things will change.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much.
Ευχαριστώ.
Thank you for the invitation. Bye.